Welcome to Automate, Delegate, Eliminate, where we discuss e-commerce issues and whether our guests today automated, delegated, or eliminated them and why. Your host is Will Christensen, co-founder of Data Automation. And again, welcome to Automate, Delegate, Eliminate.
Thanks everybody for joining us on this episode of Automate, Delegate, Eliminate. I'm your host, Will Christensen. This is sponsored by Data Automation. We are here with a very special guest. We're continuing our series where we talk about the beginnings of SaaS companies and the automation, delegation, or elimination that they are bringing to the world. Our guest today is Andy Lambert. He has over 10 years of experience creating markets, building profitable businesses, and leadership roles in industry-leading SaaS organizations. He's one of the founding team of ContentCal, an award-winning social media marketing technology software that has gone international since launching in January of 2017. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thanks, Will. Great to be on.
You know, I love the beginnings of these podcast episodes because I get this like tingly feeling all over where I'm like, okay, let's see what it looked like to get in there. So we always start out with, what does the software do, Andy? Tell us about ContentCal. And am I saying that right? I find that sometimes I say it wrong.
Yeah, no, fine. ContentCal, basically short for content calendar. So it kind of does what it says on the tin, to be honest with you. But you know, the idea behind the product is to simplify how businesses do content marketing. Content marketing is incredibly fragmented. Few businesses really nail it, and the thing that will allow businesses to nail it is having complete visibility of everything that's going on. So ContentCal is simple, it's intuitive, helps people understand everything that's happening across their business's content marketing, what's happening not just on social, but on their podcasts, on their emails, press releases, events. That whole thing is a part of a multi-channel strategy. Very few businesses properly understand that and bring that together. And that's what we're on a mission to do.
Interesting. So you've got me. My ears are perked. Data automation. We do exactly what you said. What it says on the tin. People, I love going to trade shows and they'll read my shirt and they'll be like, so what do you guys do? And I just smile and say, we automate data. So I love that that's what you guys do, and we're getting more into the realm, with this podcast and other podcasts that I've been on, some email marketing. We're getting into the realm of content. So you've got my ears perked. I'm curious about this. So tell us how your software differs from other competitors' softwares.
Yeah, brilliant question. So point number one is the fact that we're multi-channel. So you'll often find that there are thousands of tools in the social media space, of which we're in, right? So Hootsuite, Buffer, Sprout, Sprinkler, insert a million others, but very few. So that's.
Sorry, I love the names. I have to pause here for a second. I love the names of software companies. Like eventually, and there are new ones starting all the time, right? So eventually we're gonna run out of short 4-letter words that we can call things, or like when you spouted off, Hootsuite, Sprinkler, there were some that I hadn't heard of yet, and I was like, man, these names are so. I mean, we're getting abstract here. I love it. I think it's fun. Like, I wonder if you got somebody out there who would draw caricatures of all of these people, like Sprinkler was like actually a sprinkler with like a head and smiling, like walking around, and ContentCal is like actually a calendar walking around. Like there could be some seriously amazing comics written.
To be honest, I don't know if you ever seen this, but a guy called Scott Brinker does like the marketing technology stack. So he does like this state of the marketing technology thing. There's like 5,000 MarTech vendors, of which probably you and I both kind of we're definitely in the space, and the data automation are as well. I'd guess, but like it's just like a sea of logos. So what it needs to be turned into is like a big cartoon series where they all of these cartoon sprinklers and calendars just get in and beat each other up. So to be the master marketing technology. So yeah.
It's entertaining. I mean, data automation is more of a support tool, so we'd have to be like the mother hen or something coming in and like helping people connect and play nice or something like that.
Play the hero, do you, Will?
Yeah, no, we definitely get to be the hero in this cartoon series. Oh boy. All right. So tell me how. Let's go back to how does your software differ? I had to make a comment. It makes me laugh so hard when I.
Love a tangent. So yeah, how to differ, multi-channel. It's built by people that are not coders. We're marketers, so we build it through the lens of marketing. So we all are content marketers. We know the pain, and I'll talk about our startup story. So you would not believe the impact that has in terms of user growth, because funnily enough, it's something that everyone has to use on a day-to-day basis. A dev who's done a bit of market research is not in the best place to to build something that a customer is going to use every single day. You have to live and breathe that customer problem, which we did for a long time. So the usability thing is a key differentiator. And also the fact that really with ContentCal, this the fundamental part of it is that we understand that we're a part of a larger digital marketing ecosystem. Is that so many vendors try and get everything for themselves. The reality is that you need to connect lots of different parts together. Like Trello might work well for one organization to do a bit of planning, same with Asana or Monday.com, or insert a million other project management tools. There might be other tools that you want to publish to, Medium, Pinterest, whatever. All of that stuff just needs to be connected together. And really, because the main thing that marketers struggle with in our world is visibility, trying to understand what the hell's going on. And especially important right now, where the messaging that you're putting out is just so fundamental to the reputation of your business that you can't afford any missteps right now. You can never before, but I think the microscope's even more on it right now. So I think it plays well into your story as well about and the title of the podcast, to be fair.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's crazy to see what the world is doing right now, and how we're having to kind of manage those reputations and understand what that looks like. And yeah, nope, totally on the same page.
Exactly.
So tell us about your personal origin story. How do you fit into the picture of the founding team of ContentCal?
Yeah, so long story short, ContentCal existed as a different name, as an agency created by a guy called Alex Packham, who still remains our CEO. Alex had an idea to basically improve the agency that he had created, which was a content marketing agency, and improve the efficiency of that agency. Automate, delegate, eliminate, right? So, he, at that time, is building content plans in spreadsheets, which pretty much 90% of marketers still do. Ones that haven't met up with us yet. So anyway, so building content plans in spreadsheets, sending it to clients, getting clients to approve it. Clients would then go backwards and forwards around emails, and then finally, the content that's been approved would just be manually uploaded, or maybe we'd use something like Hootsuite. But either way, so Alex recognized an opportunity in that, basically. So living and breathing the customer pain, because we were our ideal customer. Anyway, so Alex was busy building that, and I was busy doing another tech startup, which ended up getting sold to Oracle. And the person I worked with in doing that, a guy called Colin Smith, who at the point of us selling it to Oracle, this business said, "Oh, I've started mentoring this company in this what's called an accelerator academy." So Alex was on an accelerator program, being mentored by this guy called Colin, who'd become a really good friend at the point of building this tech startup, which was in construction, so not in marketing. But I ran marketing and growth and stuff for it. But anyway, Colin was like, I want to introduce you to Alex. Chatted with Alex. I love the idea. I was like, well, that seems like the next venture. We're right at the start of the journey. Let's hit it. Obviously, had some concerns at first, because I'm like, this is a crowded market, right? We're wandering into a very busy market. Are you sure? Are you sure? And I debated it for a bit, because there's other opportunities that are in front of me, and I was like, I don't know. I just got the feeling that Alex is one of those guys that you're like, he's going places as well. Because I always thought I was ambitious, and I met him, and I was just like, you get that feeling, you get that spark, you get that excitement. You're like, yeah. You feel like nothing could stand in his way. So I'm like, yeah. I mean, even if the product isn't right now, and that's the thing about enterprise entrepreneurship and startups. It's like the product might not be right, but if the team is hot, then you feel like you can do great things. So Yeah, and to be honest, like most days in the startup, you're working with a ropey as hell product, right? You've got the minimum viable, if that. And you're just basically trying to flog that thing to as many people as will listen to you and selling them on the dream of what it will become. And that is the nitty gritty, like down in the weeds type of work of living and breathing a startup. So yeah, so that's where I met Alex, loved it from that moment. Well, not didn't really love the proposition at the start. Loved it. That took some convincing, but loved him. So I was like, that's enough to get me in. And marketing has always been my jam. So I'm like, well, great, let's join a marketing tech company and see what we can do. And that was probably mid 2016, and we spent probably 6 months of like trying to figure out who we were, what we were, where we're going to become, and lots of conversations about that. We spend most time daydreaming and trying to figure out what's what, and then you start meeting customers, and the customers will soon tell you what's what. So
look, so I love that. So where, in terms of like, when you joined the team, it sounds like there was an agency already, but there was a core team inside that agency that were working on this product. What did that team look like?
So great question. So the agency was, I think, probably about 10 people, still a very small agency. And it was Alex, so that had been working on this, and had a guy called Lawrence, who's our product director. So he's still with us. Who had basically just been doing some freelance design stuff. So he had kind of mocked up the MVP with some other freelance work. Basically, we just gave away some sweat equity in the business, right?
Right.
Because as I said right at the start, we're not devs, we're not coders, right? We're content marketers. So essentially, we got some guys in Russia to build it. So that's what we did. So that was the MVP of which Lawrence designed. So really, there was 2 people on it.
Those Russian mercenaries are quite helpful when it comes to. I've used developers all over the world, and I've been impressed with what I've seen with a lot of overseas devs. So I can't knock it at all. I think there's a lot of value there, and then it does make sense eventually at times to bring it all back in house and figure out where you're going with it. But yeah, totally hear you there. So were you kind of like employee number 3 or 4 that was working on this specifically, or what is that? What did the team look like when you joined?
Yeah, outside of Alex, I'm employee number 2. So Lawrence, employee number 1, I'm employee number 2. So no customers, idea stage, basically.
Yeah. And at this point, I mean, you're looking at all of your opportunities. You're looking at it and saying, okay, well, how do I really want to attach my family's future? I mean, you've got those 2 cute kids. I saw your LinkedIn profile picture, and I love that with you and your boy. Tell me, I mean, what made you decide, like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna attach my boat to his, and I mean, obviously, you mentioned that you thought he was a great person. But tell me, like financially, you're looking at this like that's a crowded market. I mean, what made you decide to really jump?
Yeah, no, and it's a really important question because it's a slightly, I would class mine as a slightly less risky entry into entrepreneurship, let's call it, because the guy that connected us, like I said, this guy called Colin, he became our chairman at that point of introducing me. He wanted me to be part of ContentCal as well, so he heavily forced my hand, to be fair. So because he was about to pony up £250,000, so what, $350,000 of his own money to fund ContentCal for the early
to make this go.
Exactly. So that paid for my salary. So I knew that at least for a couple of my salary was not 350 grand. Yeah, that's 1 year. You can get me for 1 year for 300 grand. Gladly not. So essentially that I knew that we had enough funds in the bank so that Lawrence could actually go on a salary, and so could I, because the issue, and Colin's really clear about this, is like you can't build a good business and have absolute focus if a founding team are constantly looking over their shoulders. And to be honest, and I couldn't have done that at the stage that I was in my life. I was 30 at that point, had a 2-year-old kid, And some people risk it, and it's important. Like some people know there would be some people that would gamble their house and go, I'm going for it, and fair play and credit to them. I'm not built like that, so I wouldn't risk my house on it, because family first. I would never risk anything around there.
Yeah.
So
no, that's awesome. I mean, that gut clenching moment when you just said what's there. Data automation's in a similar boat, where when we founded data automation, I went to the board essentially of a tech incubator and pitched them on an idea, and I was on salary while we built it. So that was part of the investment and where it went. So I'm in a similar boat to you, where it's like, you gotta be careful with where that is. Family first. On the same page.
Exactly. So slightly different founder story, but anyway, that meant that salary wise, I knew I was covered for. We could cover the costs. We had runway, right? So we had a year to get this nailed on, basically.
So if we're digging down into the idea of where this software came, where it was like, oh, this needs to be created. It sounds like Alex was like, okay, these spreadsheets and like the back and forth, and I mean, this is just mind-blowingly manual and annoying. There's got to be a better way. It sounds like what is where that was going. And then he approached Colin at some point and said, I think there's an opportunity for a software here. And then Colin was like, yes, there definitely is, and let's build it. Is that kind of
so Colin, like similar to me, found I don't think he really got the idea necessarily. He just bought into Alex, really. So the case of this Accelerator Academy that Alex was on, that's obviously the thing that connected him and Colin. And Colin he invests in people. He's done so many businesses. He's a serial entrepreneur, multimillionaire, and it's the people that make the ideas happen. An idea isn't actually worth anything, really. No, it's not, to be honest. The idea is worth nothing without people that to execute against that idea, and that's what Colin is keen on. So, that was the thing. The Accelerator Academy was a really valuable thing. Alex talks very highly about his experience in that, and obviously that got him to the end of that process where Colin was already going to put in a load of money because he's like, he fancied taking a bet on Alex. Yeah.
I love what you were saying about the idea is worth nothing. I tell people that all the time. When people come to me and they're like, well, I got this idea for an app, and I want you to sign an NDA and a non-compete before I'll even tell you the idea. And I just smile because I know, like, an idea really isn't worth anything. There's probably somebody else out there who's already doing whatever it is that you're thinking of doing. What's really valuable is being willing to have the passion and the desire and the drive, and then some background to actually execute on the idea. It's all about execution. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
It is indeed, and that's where you get into the early days of like putting it in front of customers, because it's very easy to get very passionate about an idea and sit in a meeting room and talk about how amazing this will be when. I'm okay to have those kind of chats initially, but realistically, I kind of want to cut that crap, and I'm just like, just get me in front of customers and I will speak to them, and the customer will tell you whether this idea cuts mustard or it doesn't. And that's the critical thing. So yeah, Alex absolutely, he's brilliant at coming up with ideas, and he is super investable. So he is like and he's just amazing in front of investors. But Alex is also really clear about what he can't do, and this is why he's brilliant as a CEO, because he's like, he does investor stuff, and he pushes the business because he's thinking about something that I go, really, that's a bit far-fetched, right? So he's always like 10 steps ahead, which is super impressive. But like I said, some of the ideas aren't really worth anything. Ideas are worth loads to investors because investors get very excited about this kind of stuff, right? And it's one thing that I thought was actually really interesting going through, spending more time with investors actually, is that sometimes they're a little bit overstated in terms of their importance and how much they know, and that they're the oracles of everything. Very few of them really know they know their stuff about investing in a certain category. Very few of them really understand tech, and I found that particularly very, very interesting on this funding journey. And they're also very easy to sell to because they want opportunity.
Mhm.
Customers are harder to sell to than investors. Put it that way.
Oh, okay. So, title of the episode right there. Customers are harder to sell to than investors, right there. So, like that is such a powerful nugget for people to recognize that. I mean, customers, I mean, they're going to be brutal, right? Every dollar counts for them. Sometimes this is their whole livelihood. Like, they're literally taking food off the table to buy your software so they can grow their little business. So I mean, and you look at an investor and he's got $1 million in the bank and he's like, oh, what am I going to do with this 250 grand? Like, how am I going to figure this out? I love that.
Yeah, I oversimplify to a degree, but the point is like they want opportunity, right? They're there to try and get opportunity, and they have huge upside if it goes well. Whereas a customer is definitely more risk averse, because ultimately that's they're trying, like you said, they're trying to protect their business. An investor really, they need to spend that money. They need to spend their fund to get business to grow. They're not going to invest in anyone. And of course, it's harder to do the sale, because there's a huge world of due diligence that obviously happens after that, right? Without going into all of the legal detail. But I think it's an important point to raise, because it's sometimes like overstated that businesses typically, have an idea straight away, go pitch investors. But you're like, it's, for me, that's just not the best way to do it. It's a way, and of course I'm biased by my own experience, but fundamentally, your idea and your business plan, and this is a quote from my favorite book, The Startup Owner's Manual.
Nice.
By Steve Blank and Bob Dorff. Basically, the first page says your business plan will not survive first contact with customers, and it's just so true. It's just so true. So I love that book, and it's very dog-eared now. Alex and I spent a lot of time reading that in the early days.
It is a really, really powerful thing to look at, where that goes and how to see. I could not agree with you more on the standpoint of, like, get it in front of those customers, and you're going to discover really quickly what was missing and where it would go. Any advice you would give to founders who are either in the process of raising money, or who maybe haven't started pitching investors, or who have investors, around creating a situation where the investors have some control, but not so much that it interferes with the vision? Any advice that you would give to our listeners?
So I'll be honest on this one, because I don't manage the investor relations side of the business. That is exclusively Alex. But Alex would talk more about that. But fundamentally, the challenge comes in is that our early days investors meddled far more than they should have done. And it's a very difficult conversation, because you want to take some money off some people, right, to grow the business, but you also want them to go sit over there. You like, be quiet, please, because there's everyone. The problem is, especially in seed investment that we found, we are working with like high net worth, which, great, we want to get a return from them, and you learn from everyone, right? But there's a point where learning, you've got what you can, and in some instances, because they haven't necessarily earned their money in the tech sector or even marketing technology, it's a point where their views on like distribution, because they've worked on like a multinational like logistics firm, you're like, it doesn't work like that anymore. If we need a customer in the US, we don't need to worry about that stuff. We just have Stripe. we just go get people to subscribe in the US. It's not very difficult anymore, and that's becomes, it's really difficult to at some point to
have that
conversation to say you don't have a board seat anymore. And that's where having a really good chairman on our side, in Colin, because he still remains our chairman, he's just absolutely brilliant, because he's a trusted confidant of the business, and you always know that he's one of those investors that cares dearly about the people inside the business as well as the business itself. So that creates a good layer of protection.
So have a good chairman. There's your word of advice, ladies and gentlemen. Know who that is, and if you're going to bring on investors who you maybe are worried about them not caring as much about the business, or excuse me, as much about the people in the business as they are the business. Make sure that you have a chairman that cares about you and cares about your vision and cares about helping the business grow in that way. Yeah.
Exactly, because it's a fair statement to make that not all money you take is good money to take. So, and I know it's a very difficult one as a founder, and it's hard to explain if someone hasn't been on that journey before. But if I looked at it again with my slightly more wizened eyes now, you'd be like, it's probably best if we do the startup again and we're taking money in the early stages. You're like, especially at seed, it's like, not sure if you're the right fit. And actually, to be fair, seed funding is just, it's quite tough, because you're trying to get as much as you can from as many people as possible. And of course, even if people have lobbed in, 25k, and some people have lobbed in 250k, someone who's lobbed in 25k feels like they should have a big say, because it might be a lot of money for that individual. So there's no simple way to cut it, but let's just go with chairman.
Have that chairman. Well, and I think it's important to recognize that that person. So there's another word of advice: look at the amount of money that individual's wanting to invest, and what does it mean to them, right? Does that amount of money mean the same to them as it means to you? And if it's not the same, make sure that that's clear, right, as they're investing. I love that. Okay, let's shift away from the investing, and I want to talk about more of moments when you realized exactly what the software needed. So where you were like, oh, it needs. I mean, we talked a little bit before. If you've ever seen and I've brought this analogy up before, but if you've ever seen the social network that follows Mark Zuckerberg, that moment when he realizes, oh, it needs relationship status. Anything like that you'd love to share with us?
Well, so the first kind of glimmer of hope was when we first started taking this to market. Even though it wasn't quite right for a lot of people, the kind of very ethos of it, and just what we would show in a kind of mocked up MVP we had, the feedback we were getting was like, it's like you've gone inside my mind and you've built what I've been trying to think I needed. So right, that's incredibly powerful, right? And I think one key element of knowing that you're ever hitting the right spot in a market is because we would find people again and again that had basically hacked together their own version of it, like hooking in a Google sheet and creating some kind of like automation to automatically publish that to social channels. People have basically tried to hack together what we built as a product. So that is an incredible sign where you're like, we're all along the right lines. Now, that one of the moments of like realization as to what we needed, and we're actually still, we're still on this journey of trying to build out what this is, to be honest with you. But when you start to realize the opportunity, and it really did dawn on us, the more big businesses we were speaking to, the more that they started to go like, how do I get more people involved in content marketing? Because content marketing typically exists with just like a single marketer or a marketing team. The reality is they can't come up with all of the ideas, and plus they're the mouthpiece for the business. Like that's a huge amount on a team of 5. So how do you get all of those ideas in, and then how do you kind of like distribute that in more and more places? So it's kind of like lots of conversations were coming together. It felt like all the puzzle pieces in my mind were just coming together, where like I described at the start, ContentCal sits at the center, and you've got ways in which that you can hoover content ideas into ContentCal from loads of places, and then basically send that to huge amount of places thereafter. So what we kind of thought about as a business, as we're meeting more and more customers, we started to get a bit of a picture as to like all of the things that they need. And then really it's a case of like connecting so many dots and bringing it all together, and that's really where the light bulb went off as to like where this product can evolve to. And this is the journey that we're currently on. So we're kind of right in the middle of this. And as an example, right, because we find that so many companies would use Slack to share ideas with each other. So why don't we have an integration with Slack into ContentCal, so you can pull those ideas directly into like your kind of content ideas bucket, if you will. And that then opens up content creation to the entire business. So your entire business then become content creators, which transforms both the quality of content, the quantity of content, and really like starts to lean a business into more of a kind of content first orientated business. And the timing is so good for this right now, despite obviously the world pandemic going on, but the timing is so incredible for that now, because that is massively needed. And now it becomes like a bit of a funnel where all your content goes into the top of that funnel, into ContentCal to organize and distribute that, and then out the bottom of a funnel, really, where essentially we're distributing it not just to social channels, which is where we started. It's down to everything. It's blog, newsletters.
So what was the moment when you realized Slack was the way that you could involve the entire company? What was somebody like, oh, hey, what if we created a Slack integration, or did you find a lot of users were copying and pasting from Slack? What was that moment like?
Yeah, so it was more of a natural evolution, and I would say that the key element to this is like every single sales meeting we had, certainly in the early days, we would make sure we question around not just the use of the product, but everything else that kind of was tangentially linked to content marketing. Like, how do you come up with ideas? Who do you work with? Tell me every struggle, not just related to, what I'm showing you of ContentCal. Just share all, basically. So at the end of every meeting, I'm trying to make it into like an agony aunt session where they just like spill their guts about every single issue that they had, and I just note it in a massive Google Doc. And it just became a huge like research piece. And that research piece is something advocated again by this book, Startup Owner's Manual, which is like, they call it the customer development process. And really, they refer to a startup as just a research project, because really at an idea stage, that's all it is. Many people misconceive themselves and they think they've got a business, but they don't really. They've just got an idea. So it is a research
project. I love that. Oh, that's another. An idea is just a research project. I need to go. I haven't actually. That's not. I've read the Lean Startup, and I've read several of the other books that are out there around that. I haven't had a chance to read Startup Owner's Manual yet, and I'm putting it on the list.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you would go through in one go, but like the first couple of chapters, I think really for every startup founder, I would definitely advocate it. Yeah, so really, you just continually treat everything like a research project, because that's why it's so important to have both like Alex, our CEO, thinking like he's in his own head, thinking of like next new things. But where I play in the business is like, I'm so in depth with the customers of going like, tell me everything you're struggling with, because I want to know the stuff that's existing today and where we start to connect it all. And that's really as simple as that, because as long as we were fortunate enough that our product in its kind of like MVP guise, and as it evolved, was good enough to transact and start making money out of that, that was good. We got a sales process going and all that good stuff. But we just never stop learning. And you're always just like, every single time you're speaking with someone and going like, let's try and think broader. Let's try and think about how many things we can make this into. And that's, so long story short, it's not like a light bulb moment that suddenly you're like, oh, right. I couldn't pin it on a certain point, like in the social network example you gave, but it's like the culmination of things. And the way I work is just kind of like just continually writing stuff down and just drawing diagrams on the wall and being like, how does this all come together? And that's the thing I find just the best. I flipping love it. I like trying to hear a problem and then trying to figure out ways that you can knit together a solution that will further differentiate you. I mean, to be fair, it's quite similar to what you do at your business, but so you can identify with that, I expect.
I love it. As you're looking at this, what difficulties did you face as you begun diving in, on ContentCal as employee number two? What difficulties did you face, and how did you overcome them? Any that you want to highlight?
Yeah, where do you want to start? It's super hard. Early days, like anything, right? Because you are batting on any people's doors, like virtually speaking, to try and get them to give you some time, right? That's the hardest thing, is just trying to get that learning as quickly as possible. Really hard at a standing start, and to get people to buy you initially. The first 100 customers took us, 100 paying customers, that took us a year to get. And we thought we actually expected to get that within the first month of launching. So shows how naive and ambitious you kind of are sometimes. because we thought, right, well, we're going to launch it upon the world. You can sign up online, put your credit card details in, and away you go. Everyone will do it. Did anyone do it? Did they hell? So yeah, so there we go. It's just a story of like, right, well, if no one is finding us, obviously not, because we're too early stages for that. So we're going to go find them. So it's just a case of Zoom call after Zoom call.
How did you find them though? Was it Facebook ads? Was it? I mean, what did you do to go out and get? I mean, because you have to start somewhere in terms of having those conversations. What did you do?
Exactly. Annoying people on LinkedIn mostly.
LinkedIn is the best spam network ever, man. It is amazing how, I mean, and you have to do it right. It's amazing how many LinkedIn outreaches I get specifically, and I have a dedicated employee. She actually is our podcast manager as well. She's listening to this call, so she is a dedicated person who helps me manage my LinkedIn and those conversations. So totally, yeah. So annoying a lot of people on LinkedIn is how you kind of got that initially started.
And then cold outreach, right? Because and I think an important point to note here is that in the early days, we bought an email list, right? As most people do, buy an email list, of content marketers, social media marketers. It was at that point. Buy an email list, send out an email blast, and hope people will come back to you, which a few people do, and you book a few meetings off the back of it. But one thing that was a real struggle is that you're going to get loads of feedback in the early days where people are like, oh, that's not good enough, or this is good, or whatever. It's really hard to start deciphering what's good feedback and what is not, and what is distracting feedback. Something that you're just like, that's actually noise. Thank you for your feedback, but respectfully, I'm not going to listen to it. And there's some things that's golden. That takes a little while to refine that. There's no easy way to explain that. But also a real key thing to note, especially for a business like ours, which has such broad market potential, right? It's content marketing, everyone does it. So for something like ours, one thing, I stole a term from Seth Godin, which I'm sure you probably have heard of him. So he has a term called like minimum viable audience. So smallest possible audience you can go to that will sustain your business. And you actually see when you market within an audience, like that, you actually gain better traction because it's kind of like a self-referring audience, because you seem bigger because you appear more to that audience, right? So it's just about standard like cognizance. So someone's seen you more often. So that audience that we selected was an agency audience, right? Because we could tell a good story to them because we were an agency ourselves. This is what we did. This is how we transformed things, yada yada. So that's a good story to tell. Lots of people bought into that. And the reason that we went to this agency audience is that I'd spent maybe 2-3 months getting battered around looking at massive businesses. You go after the big enterprise ones, like ones I'd worked with like historically in previous companies, yada yada. And they'll hear you out. They might say, "Oh, this is great. This has massive potential." And we call it happy ears, right? So it's like someone will sit there for an hour. They'll tell you all these great things, but will something happen? Will it?
No.
Yeah. So and you're like, are we trying to build a product for a big market? Because I think our investors in the early days were expecting that this was going to be an enterprise play, like we're going to be doing massive deals, etc. Just that wasn't the reality. The reality was very far removed from that. So that did take some time to explain that in the early days and go like, this is not your big enterprise software. This is mass market kind of stuff where we're going to be selling 20-30 quid a month subscriptions. We're not doing 20 grand deals, that kind of stuff. So it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while before you're going to hit that hockey stick. That is for sure. Anyway, so that was a massive challenge, but it had to be done because in the early, we would have died if we were going to just focus on that enterprise audience. So
that goes back to your business plan. I mean, the first interaction with your customers, you realize, oh crap, we're not an enterprise customer software at this current moment in time. So we have to pivot back and see where that's going.
Exactly. Perfect point.
This has been amazing. I think we found some nuggets here that we haven't found in past episodes with this season. So I'm super excited about that for our listeners. To round us out, what advice would you give other SaaS entrepreneurs that are just starting out or that are in some stage of their business? And maybe they've got some investors, maybe they're further along than you. What would be that one piece of advice that you would say, hey, don't forget to or don't, make sure that you're focusing on, what would it be?
So many options. Don't forget to, I'm going to call this as a phrase of own your growth. And what I mean by that is that there is far too much reliance for early stage businesses on things like Facebook ads or Google PPC. You're building your business on rented land, and the moment you turn off that budget, leads disappear. It gives you very little brand lift. So invest heavily in your kind of long-term brand building activity. For us, that's been hugely in around our educational content. Our academy has been viewed by 2,000 businesses just since we launched it in March, but we've been doing so much heavyweight stuff around education to help people become better marketers in the space. It's done wonders for our reputation. And as much as you can with that, with owning your growth, create personalities within this space. So within your market, like not just the CEO just being like the typical CEO founder, but like make your business, especially if you're a B2B type of organization, make your business seem really accessible and give it personality. And that is something that's going to build reputation for you over the long term, which means that hopefully you'll get to a position, or you might well be further ahead of us, but we're in a position now where we don't rely anywhere near as much from PPC. Our organic traffic is huge.
Super powerful. So ending note here, don't build your business on rented land. Buy the land. And the way you buy the land is one content piece, one education piece, one partnership at a time. Our business is built on referrals and built on partnerships that we build with referrals. And the way we start out with that is annoying people on LinkedIn. So we get out there, we build a real relationship with someone, and those relationships are what's there. And we don't rely as heavily on paid search and some of those other things that are out there. So could not agree with you more about don't build that business on rented land. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't start the business on rented land, but quickly own your growth.
Yeah, exactly that. So yeah, it's not either or, but yeah, that's just the advice I would give, because it's sometimes missed.
Yep. I love it. That's it. That's our episode today for Automate, Delegate, Eliminate. I want to thank you, Andy, for being here.
Thank you.
This is a fantastic episode for people. I think that we got some really, really great nuggets. And again, appreciate your time, appreciate your willingness to share. That's it for Automate, Delegate, Eliminate.
You've been listening to Automate, Delegate, Eliminate, hosted by Will Christensen.